Joining me to debate this topic, attorney Doug Chanco, and from our New York studio, trial attorney Corey Stern. Corey, to you, will this jury believe Mimi Halle?
I think they're going to have a really, really difficult time believing her in full. As we all know, the standard is reasonable doubt. They don't necessarily have to believe it 100%. They just have to believe it enough where they can get past the burden. But it's going to be very, very difficult. She alleges something terrible happened to her. She then flies to L.A. She communicates with him in L.A. She sees him a second time. She's drawing hearts in her book. She doesn't seem to have necessarily, at least to the eye of at least one or more jurors, this deep-rooted feeling that something terrible had happened to her, or fear that it could happen again, when on every single occasion that she had actually been physically present with Harvey Weinstein, he had done something that was inappropriate with her. Whether it was asking for a massage or asking to give a massage, to forcing her into oral sex, she had no reason to believe that any time she met with him it would ever be different. So I think a jury's going to very much struggle with her testimony.
Doug?
Enduring is never consenting, and I think the jury gets that. Just agreeing to testify is a stain that is never going to go away. It's a true modern-day scarlet A that she's dealing with. And even if they aren't saying it out loud, in the back of their minds, the juries know there is no reason someone would want to testify and put themselves through this and having to relive it just because of a question of, was it anything other than enduring?
Corey, the fact that if you're the jury and you believe her telling of the actual event where she says she was pinned down on the bed and Harvey Weinstein performed oral sex on her while she was saying no, 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 isn't that enough?
It very well might be enough under the law, but some jurors are going to doubt the veracity of the story based on the events that occurred thereafter. So if that were the only moment in time that a jury was looking at in making a determination about guilt or innocence, reasonable doubt, or just the veracity of her testimony, that description, that incident, that carries the day. But what happens is credibility becomes a part of the assessment. And so a jury can't just ignore the subsequent events and her testimony about the subsequent events. Yes, if a jury focuses solely and completely on that one set of events, yes, I think he's going to be found guilty. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side you're on, the jury has an obligation. They've taken an oath to evaluate all of the evidence, to listen to all of the testimony. And there will be some jurors who at a minimum will question the credibility and the veracity of her statements about the first event in light of what she did subsequent thereto.
And Doug, isn't that the point where you do have jurors are going to say, well, I never would have gone back there if that would have happened to me? Don't jurors put themselves in the position of a defendant, position of a witness, and in this case, isn't there trouble?
All the time. Hindsight's 20/20, and unfortunately, no matter how good of a job the lawyers are doing, witnesses time and again say, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have allowed this to happen. Why? Why would you go back? That's absolutely something that has to be answered by the prosecution. And the fact remains.
Is that fair?
It may not be fair, but it's unfortunately what you've got to deal with in a case.
Aren't we putting the witness on trial, Corey, when we think this way, that we're now nitpicking away at what she did afterwards and second-guessing it when she was, according to her, under oath, the victim of a horrible attack?
I mean, in some ways, it probably feels as though she's on trial. But the reality is the man who's on trial, Harvey Weinstein, despite the despicable nature of the allegations against him and the widespread nature of the occurrences that he's being accused of, the Constitution affords him, the Constitution of the United States affords him the right to due process. And his lawyers, whether their tone and inclination are funny or a little bit outrageous, they're doing a very good job of cross-examining witnesses in an attempt to help their clients client and to afford him the constitutional protections that he's entitled to. So it's not really about her as much as it is about the process. Do I think that she's being candid and honest? I do. Do I think the jury has to evaluate each of her stories and juxtapose story upon story upon story to try and find somewhere in that juxtaposition the truth? Absolutely. Where does it come out? Who knows? Because jurors go in a back room and they sit and talk, and one juror will absolutely believe that her first story was true and she had no choice but to go to continue to see him. Another juror will say, as you mentioned earlier, how in the world would she ever go see him a second time? And that's what's beautiful about the system, is when you take the due process considerations and you take the testimony and you put jurors in a room and they consider all of that, normally they come to the right conclusion.
Final thought, Doug, will they believe Mimi Haley?
I think they will. The most dangerous thing right now for Weinstein's team, as every good lawyer knows, that when you're arguing, you're losing. And some of the things that have come out so far with going fast and getting aggressive with that witness, it's going to get transposed over to their client, and they better be careful.
All right, thank you both. We're going to step aside. When we come back,